They call it the Devil's Triangle, a place where ships vanish without a trace, where planes disappear from radar screens, where the ocean itself seems to swallow everything whole. For over a century, the Bermuda Triangle has claimed more than 1,000 lives. But here's what they don't want you to know. The disappearances are getting worse. The triangle stretches between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. 500,000 square miles of cursed water. But this isn't just another mystery. This is a phenomenon that has stumped scientists, terrified pilots, and left families searching for answers that may be too horrifying to accept. On December 5th, 1945, 5 military planes took off from Fort Lauderdale. They never came back. The rescue plane sent to find them. It vanished too. 6 aircraft, 27 men, gone without a single piece of wreckage. The official report called it pilot error, but the radio transmissions tell a different story. A story of compass needles spinning wildly, of instruments going dead, of experienced pilots becoming completely lost in clear skies. Lieutenant Charles Taylor's voice crackled through the radio that day. "Everything is wrong," he said. "Everything looks strange, even the ocean." Those were among the last words ever heard from Flight 19. But they weren't the last to disappear. The USS Cyclops was a massive naval ship, 542 feet long, carrying 19,000 tons of cargo. In March 1918, it sailed from Barbados toward Baltimore. The ship had enough supplies for weeks, experienced crew, and perfect weather conditions. But the Cyclops never reached port. No distress signal, no wreckage, no survivors. A ship that size doesn't just disappear. It did. The Navy launched the largest search in its history. They found nothing. Not a single piece of debris in waters they knew like the back of their hand. How does a ship weighing 19,000 tons simply vanish? The official explanation blamed structural failure. But here's what they didn't tell you. 2 identical ships, the USS Proteus and USS Nereus, disappeared in the exact same area 23 years later. Same cargo, same route, same mysterious vanishing act. 3 identical ships, 3 identical disappearances. The Navy called it coincidence, but experienced sailors know better. They know the triangle has rules that don't apply anywhere else on Earth. Captain Don Henry learned this the hard way in 1966. He was piloting a tugboat through the triangle when every instrument on his ship went haywire. The compass spun like a child's toy. The radio died. Then the water around his boat began to glow. A soft, eerie light that seemed to come from somewhere far below the surface. Henry gunned the engines and escaped, but not before seeing something that haunts him to this day. The water wasn't just glowing. It was moving in perfect circles, creating a pattern that defied every law of nature he knew. Scientists tried to explain it. Ocean currents, they said. Phosphorescent algae. But Henry knew what he saw. And he wasn't the first. Christopher Columbus documented strange lights in these waters back in 1492. His crew reported seeing a fireball dance across the sky before plunging into the ocean. Columbus himself wrote about compass needles pointing in impossible directions. Even then, 500 years ago, the triangle was claiming its victims. But ships and planes aren't the only things that disappear here. People vanish too, and sometimes they come back changed. Bruce Gernon thought he was going to die on December 4th, 1970. He was flying a small plane from Andros Island to Palm Beach, a routine flight he'd made dozens of times. But as he approached the triangle, storm clouds began forming out of nowhere. Clouds that seemed to move with purpose, boxing him in from all sides. Gernon had no choice but to fly through the storm. As his plane entered the clouds, everything went silent. The engine noise disappeared. The radio went dead, but the plane kept flying through what Gernon described as a tunnel of swirling gray mist, a tunnel that seemed to bend space and time itself. The flight should have taken 90 minutes. Gernon landed in 35. He had somehow traveled 250 miles in 28 minutes. His fuel gauge showed impossible readings. Air traffic control had lost him completely on radar for 34 minutes. When they asked where he'd been, Gernon couldn't answer, because according to the laws of physics, he'd been nowhere at all. But Gernon's story isn't unique. Dozens of pilots have reported similar experiences. Time distortions, electronic failures, clouds that form geometric patterns. The triangle doesn't just make things disappear. It plays with reality itself. Captain Carolyn Cascio experienced this firsthand in 1989. She was sailing through the triangle when her compass began spinning wildly. Then her GPS died. Her radio went silent. For 6 hours, she drifted through water that looked wrong. The waves moved in slow motion. The sun seemed frozen in the sky. When her instruments finally started working again, she had somehow traveled 40 miles in the wrong direction. 6 hours of missing time. 6 hours that don't exist on any clock. The Coast Guard finds these stories hard to believe, but they can't explain the evidence. Planes that land with less fuel than they should have used. Ships that arrive hours before they left port. Instruments that malfunction only in one specific area of the ocean. Dr. Richard Weiner spent 20 years investigating the triangle. He collected over 500 first-hand accounts. Pilots, sailors, passengers, all telling the same impossible story. Electronics fail. Time stops. Reality bends. And sometimes, people see things that shouldn't exist. In 1977, a charter boat captain named Jim Richardson was fishing in the triangle when he saw lights beneath the water. Not random lights, organized patterns, moving in formation. He watched for 3 hours as the lights performed maneuvers no known sea creature could make. Sudden stops, perfect right-angle turns, speeds that would kill any living thing. Richardson tried to radio the Coast Guard, but his radio was dead. When he finally reached port, 12 hours had passed, but his watch showed only 4. These aren't stories of drunk fishermen or attention-seeking pilots. These are trained professionals with decades of experience. People who know the difference between reality and imagination. And are all saying the same thing. The Bermuda Triangle operates by different rules. For 60 years, the U.S. government maintained that the Bermuda Triangle was nothing more than a statistical anomaly. Ships and planes, they said, disappeared at normal rates in those waters. There was nothing mysterious about it, nothing unexplained. Just bad weather and human error. But in 2018, Freedom of Information Act requests revealed a different story. Classified documents showing that the government had been monitoring the triangle since 1943. Military reports describing encounters with unidentified objects. Navy files documenting electromagnetic anomalies. Coast Guard records of impossible rescues. Project Blue Water was established in 1952 to investigate unusual phenomena in the triangle. For 23 years, military personnel documented every strange occurrence. Electronic failures, time distortions, object sightings. The files paint a picture of systematic study. The government wasn't ignoring the triangle. They were watching it very carefully. One report from 1967 described a Navy destroyer encountering massive electromagnetic interference while passing through the triangle. Every electronic system failed except for one emergency radio. Through the static, the crew heard something impossible. Their own voices, speaking words they hadn't said yet. Conversations from their own future, echoing back through time. Another file documented the experience of a Coast Guard cutter in 1973. While responding to a distress call in the triangle, the ship's radar detected an object the size of an aircraft carrier. But there was nothing on the surface, nothing visible. The object was beneath the water, moving at speeds no submarine could achieve. When the cutter tried to investigate, their engines died. They drifted for 6 hours before power mysteriously returned. The most classified files dealt with recovery operations. Between 1954 and 1982, the military recovered dozens of objects from the triangle's waters. Objects that didn't match any known aircraft or vessel. Objects made from materials that shouldn't exist. Objects that generated their own electromagnetic fields even after being pulled from the water. These objects were sent to a facility in Nevada for analysis. What researchers found challenged everything they thought they knew about physics. The materials were arranged in impossible configurations, molecular structures that defied the laws of chemistry, technology that operated on principles beyond human understanding. Dr. Robert Lazar worked on some of these objects in the 1980s. According to his testimony, the technology was centuries ahead of anything humans had developed. It used electromagnetic fields to manipulate gravity itself, to bend space and time, to move through dimensions that humans couldn't even perceive. But the most disturbing discovery was that the technology was still active. Even after decades underwater, these objects continued to function. They responded to electromagnetic stimuli. They adapted to new environments. They learned. The government studies concluded that the Bermuda Triangle was an active research zone. Someone or something was testing advanced technology in those waters. Technology that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. And occasionally, human vessels got caught in the experiments. In 2019, Dr. Meyer Verlag led the most comprehensive study of the triangle ever attempted. Using deep-sea submersibles and advanced sonar equipment, his team mapped the ocean floor in unprecedented detail. What they found shattered every theory about the triangle's origins. Beneath 3,000 feet of water, perfectly preserved structures covered the seafloor. Not natural formations, buildings, geometric shapes that could only have been constructed by intelligence. Structures that predated human civilization by thousands of years. The buildings generated their own electromagnetic fields. Fields so powerful they could interfere with electronics miles away. The structures weren't ruins. They were active, functioning, operating according to principles that human science couldn't explain. Verlag's team tried to explore these structures using remote-controlled vehicles. Every robot that approached within 500 meters shut down completely. Not damaged, simply turned off, as if something had pressed a switch. When the robots were recovered, their computer systems had been wiped clean, not corrupted, deliberately erased. But the structures had left something behind. Each robot returned with its electromagnetic sensors modified, enhanced. The modifications followed the same mathematical patterns found in all triangle phenomena. Someone was studying human technology, learning from it, improving it. The implications were staggering. The Bermuda Triangle wasn't a natural phenomenon or a government experiment. It was a research facility operated by an intelligence far older and more advanced than humanity. An intelligence that had been studying our world for centuries. This explained everything. The electronic failures were scanning procedures. The time distortions were side effects of dimensional manipulation. The disappearances were data collection. And the survivors were test subjects who had been studied and released. Dr. Verlag tried to publish his findings. His research was classified before it could reach peer review. His funding was terminated. His team was reassigned to other projects. But his data survived, copied and hidden by researchers who understood its importance. The data revealed patterns spanning centuries. The triangle's activity increased whenever human technology advanced. During the development of radio in the 1900s, during radar development in the 1940s, during the space race in the 1960s, during the computer revolution in the 1980s. Each technological leap was followed by increased electromagnetic activity in the triangle. Something was monitoring human progress, studying our achievements, learning from our innovations. The triangle wasn't just a place where strange things happened. It was a window into our world, operated by observers who had been watching us evolve. Lisa Chun was a data analyst for the National Weather Service who noticed something strange in 2021. Electromagnetic disturbances in the triangle were following a pattern. not a random pattern. A countdown. The disturbances occurred every 37 days, lasting exactly 4 hours and 23 minutes. They had been following this schedule for over 40 years. But recently, the intervals were shortening. 36 days, then 35. The countdown was accelerating. Chun calculated that the intervals would reach zero in 2029. But zero what? What would happen when the countdown ended? She shared her findings with Dr. Patricia Wells, an electromagnetic physicist who had been studying the triangle independently. Wells had noticed similar patterns in historical data, electromagnetic activity that peaked and fell in precise cycles. Cycles that were now reaching their culmination. Together, they uncovered something terrifying. The triangle's electromagnetic field was expanding. The area of disturbance had grown by 30% since 1990. Ships were reporting electronic failures further and further from the traditional triangle boundaries. The phenomenon was spreading. Wells calculated that at current expansion rates, the triangle's effects would reach the entire Atlantic Ocean by 2031. Every ship, every plane, every electronic device crossing the Atlantic would be vulnerable to the same forces that had claimed so many vessels over the past century. But the expansion wasn't random. It followed the same mathematical sequences found in all triangle phenomena. The intelligence operating the triangle was preparing for something, building towards some ultimate purpose that required control over a much larger area. Dr. Samuel Rodriguez was an archaeologist who had spent decades studying ancient civilizations. When he learned about the triangle research, he recognized the patterns immediately. They matched electromagnetic signatures found at ancient sites around the world. Stonehenge, the pyramids, Machu Picchu, Easter Island. Rodriguez believed these sites were connected to the triangle through a global network of electromagnetic manipulation, a network that had been operating for thousands of years, guiding human development from the shadows. The triangle was just the most active node in a system that spanned the entire planet. His research suggested that major leaps in human technology hadn't been accidents. They had been influenced, guided by an intelligence that understood the importance of gradual progress. An intelligence that was now preparing for the next phase of human evolution. The truth about the Bermuda Triangle isn't what anyone expected. It's not a natural phenomenon. It's not a government conspiracy. It's not even alien intervention. It's something far more profound and terrifying. Dr. Elena Vasquez was a quantum physicist who approached the triangle mystery from a completely different angle. Instead of studying electromagnetic effects, she focused on quantum mechanics, on the possibility that consciousness itself could influence reality at the quantum level. Her research led to a shocking conclusion. The triangle phenomena weren't being caused by advanced technology. They were being caused by consciousness, pure intelligence operating without physical form, intelligence that existed in the quantum field itself. This consciousness had been observing humanity since the beginning of recorded history, not as an outside observer, but as an active participant in human development. It had influenced key moments in human evolution, sparked innovations, guided discoveries, shaped the course of human civilization. The Bermuda Triangle was its primary interface with our physical reality, a place where consciousness could manipulate matter and energy directly, where the boundaries between thought and reality became permeable. The electromagnetic effects weren't side effects. They were communications. The consciousness was trying to establish direct contact with human minds. But human consciousness wasn't developed enough yet. The contact attempt caused confusion, memory gaps, electronic failures. The disappearances weren't accidents. They were invitations. People who demonstrated the right mental characteristics were taken to a place outside normal space-time, educated, evolved, then returned to humanity as unconscious agents of progress. But something had changed. The consciousness was no longer content with gradual influence. It was preparing for direct revelation. The countdown wasn't to destruction. It was to first contact, open communication between human and quantum consciousness. The Bermuda Triangle continues to expand. Ships and planes still disappear. Electronic systems still fail. But now we understand why. We're not victims of some natural disaster or alien experiment. We're students in a classroom that spans the entire planet. The consciousness in the triangle has been preparing us for centuries. Every technological advancement, every scientific discovery, every leap forward in human understanding has been carefully orchestrated to bring us to this moment. Soon, the barriers between dimensions will be thin enough for direct communication. The triangle will become what it was always meant to be, a bridge between human consciousness and something far greater than ourselves. But here's what terrifies the researchers who know the truth. What if we're not ready? What if direct contact with quantum consciousness destroys human individuality? What if we lose ourselves in something infinitely larger than anything we can imagine? The triangle holds answers to every question humanity has ever asked. But those answers come with a price. The price of everything we think we know about reality, consciousness, and our place in the universe. The countdown continues. Every day brings us closer to revelation. And every day, more people begin to understand that the Bermuda Triangle was never our enemy. It was our future. The question isn't whether contact will happen. The question is whether we're ready to abandon everything we believe about what it means to be human. Time is running out. The triangle is calling. And soon, we'll have no choice but to answer. In the end, the greatest mystery of the Bermuda Triangle isn't what makes ships disappear. It's what waits for us on the other side of understanding. What we become when we finally stop being merely human. The triangle has been patient for centuries. But patience has its limits. And those limits are measured in the very countdown that grows shorter with every passing day. Are you ready to discover what lies beyond the edge of everything you thought was possible? Because ready or not, the revelation is coming. And when it arrives, the Bermuda Triangle will finally reveal its ultimate secret. We were never meant to solve the mystery. We were meant to become part of it.